Previously on Proto Death Knight. As expected, things were going smoothly until I noticed that after our mage failed to produce any meaningful damage, he left the group. In the end, slightly irritated, I finished the dungeon and went to turn in the completed quest. I went back to the Centaurs and grouped up with other players who were doing the exact same task, and together we killed Verog, pulling Hezrul deeper into the water, and with the help of another player we managed to relieve him of his head as well. To wrap things up, I quickly dealt with the turtles and collected their shells. For Hezrul's head I received our first ring, +3 to agility and +1 stamina. Not ideal for my build, but stats are stats, and at this point I'll take whatever I can get. Stonetalon Mountains is a relatively small zone, especially after spending so much time wandering through the massive barrens, but it's also one of those places where I always feel like I've closed one chapter and unlocked a whole new set of paths I can take on my way to max level. My first task there was killing Taurens, who were a few levels below me, so it was honestly satisfying to watch my warlock dominate them in combat. Unfortunately, the health issue is still very much a thing, even against weaker enemies. Survivability remains a constant problem. Still, the damage felt solid enough, so without wasting time, I also took on escorting Kaya back to her family. After turning everything in, I was sent right back out to deal with a few more Taurens. Then came the spiders, and that's where I finally hit level 20. From there I reached Sunrock Retreat, picked up every quest I could reasonably complete, and continued onward. That led me to Windshear Crag, where I was tasked with killing Venture Seal loggers, and later into the Cobalt Caves in search of crystals. Once again, I ended up interacting with another player, this time because he asked for help taking down an elite. This might actually be the first time in my entire World of Warcraft history where this happens so often, and strangely enough, I'm starting to enjoy it. Even a short exchange of a few words or sentences brings a weird sense of satisfaction. That said, Stonetalon itself wasn't exactly doing it for me, so I decided to head back to Tirisfal Glades, because why not push the storyline towards Silverpine Forest? Especially since there's a dungeon there I definitely want to visit at some point. I picked up nearly every available quest in the area, even though my level was already a bit too high for most of them. I figured I will be spending some time there anyway, and it wouldn't require much effort, so why not grab some extra gold and free experience? And just like that, I threw myself into hunting bears and worgens. Later on, it was time for spiders, an area frequently patrolled by Sons of Arugal. They hit incredibly hard, and on top of that, they can curse you with a debuff that deals between 175 and 225 shadow damage every 60 seconds for 5 minutes. Which, at this stage of leveling, is basically a death sentence. This time, however, our paths didn't cross, and I was free to move on to yet another werewolf massacre. That pushed me to level 21. I spent another talent point in improved Curse of Agony, and I can finally show off my latest purchase. All for the low price of 3 gold, Twisted Saber, with +2 stamina, +5 spirit, and most importantly, a weapon speed of 1.8, which means I finally switched to a faster swords. This purchase really opened my eyes and honestly taught me just how much time I'd wasted struggling with slow weapons. The difference was noticeable immediately. Sure, the Dalaran apprentices were much lower level and never posed any real threat, but my warlock absolutely shredded them, hit after hit, knowing that even if one swing missed, the next one was already on the way. At this point I genuinely couldn't complain about my damage output. That part of the build felt polished and satisfying. Unfortunately, there wasn't much I could do about my defense. Survivability was still terrible, so while leveling became more enjoyable on the one hand, my biggest limiter was still health and overall toughness. I even decided to go after allied werewolves, which initially felt like a terrible idea. Despite being lower level, my lack of defense meant they could have flattened me pretty quickly. Surprisingly though, it wasn't that bad. The character held up reasonably well, dealt solid damage, and once I accepted that my survivability simply wasn't going to improve anytime soon, I actually started enjoying smashing enemies over the head with this sword. And then there was one more thing my warlock handled far better than questing. Dungeons. Wailing Caverns was the second stop after Ragefire Chasm that I really wanted to clear. I only regret one thing, not enabling my add-on details to properly track whether my damage was keeping up with the rest of the group. Still, tearing through raptors and other monsters inside felt incredibly satisfying. Instances are where this build truly comes alive, where I feel that even though I'm playing differently than most people, I'm still useful and not falling behind. My trip there didn't have any grand objective, there isn't much loot here that really excites me. Maybe a ring or the shoulder pads from Mutanus the Devourer at best. The run itself went smoothly and even Crash didn't stand a chance against us. We pushed deeper into this twisted, magical cavern, cutting down everything that stood in our way. At times I barely even noticed we were fighting bosses. They blended in with regular mobs and, just like them, posed no real threat to us. That's exactly how Lord Pythas went down. Next up was Skoom, a massive Kodo beast shooting lightning, and despite his huge health pool and thick hide that granted him solid armor, he was taken down without breaking a sweat. As I mentioned before, the loot from this dungeon didn't really hold much value for me. For this run, Wailing Caverns was more of a formality than a gear hunt. I want this series to include every dungeon at least once, even if there's nothing inside that will help me on the road ahead. Eventually, we reached Lord Serpentis, standing right next to Verdan, guarding the path deeper into the caverns. Judging by how short that fight was, I can only mention him as a curiosity. After that came Verdan, the Everlyn, the second to last boss of Wailing Caverns. Once he was dealt with, we could move on to the short escort that leads us to the final boss, and the only one in this place who could drop an item I actually cared about. I was feeling slightly motivated at that point. I had gotten practically nothing from this dungeon so far, so it felt like I was owed something for my contribution to the run. Mutanus the Devourer went down very quickly and dropped a ring that could have fit my build perfectly. Unfortunately, luck wasn't on my side. And just like that, my journey through Wailing Caverns came to an end. On one hand, it was successful. Dungeon runs always provide valuable experience. On the other hand, it felt a bit bitter because I walked away with absolutely nothing. In the end though, that didn't really matter. I realized that while this character struggles during leveling due to poor defense, it performs exceptionally well in dungeons. And more importantly, I felt a growing hunger to run more instances like this, especially since they offer solid experience and plenty of items that can at least be sold. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope we'll meet again soon in the next episode. See you then.